One of the important features of the Beautiful 2 line, whether we're using the enamel composites that are developed, they're really the same as the Beautiful 2 Gymer composites. I think that speaks for itself, the properties that we've already talked about, the bioactivity of it. But these complement each other because in a very simplistic, cost-effective way, you don't have to purchase a lot of extra products. You can just learn and implement these in a very orderly fashion and expand your practice and get yourself to the next level. The first workshop, we're going to be doing a generous class 3 restoration on the distal of tooth number 8. And you can see from this typodont, even though this is an acrylic tooth, you can almost see the outline of the dentin core underneath, which is the hue and the chroma. And then you see the proximal translucency right here. This is not dentin, this is all enamel right in here. So by cutting the class 3 preparation, and I'll show you a very unique beveling system that my teaching partner and myself, Brian Lesage out of Beverly Hills, teach. It's called the Starburst bevel. Once I place the bevel and place the adhesion, then I'll be putting a high value lingual shelf in so you can see how we use a skeletal technique and build from the back to the front. Then I'll be putting a flowable and actually doing a cable surface caulking, like caulking a window right here on the margin in the bevel. Then I'll be putting A1 Beautiful 2 dentin in there, and then on top of that I'll put a high value translucent enamel, and let's see how we do. Again, this is a skeletal technique, and I'm going to incorporate as many value features as I can for you in these workshops. Let's start out with the class 3 preparation on the distal of number 8. The Starburst bevel, this is in my artistic burr kit, and this is a fairly aggressive red flame diamond. And a Starburst bevel, normally on a bevel we would maybe create a 2 millimeter bevel, long bevel around here. A Starburst bevel is a bevel and a bevel, so what I'm going to be doing is going back and forth, up, down, back, forth, and create more of an artistic design to create more surface area contact, engage more hydroxyapatite. Every place I go back and forth, up, down, and that's why I call it the Starburst bevel. Here's the Starburst bevel. You can see the effect of the Starburst right here, and we want to remove any sharp line angles, point angles right here. Let's go through the adhesion. First of all, I'm going to do the bevel. See how I'm going from the inside of the Starburst to the outside. We want to go past the Starburst bevel, then with a micro brush, capture the internal parts of all the preparations. One thin layer is all you need. I'm going to put the putty stent back in, and we're going to be doing the lingual enamel. This is the high value translucency. This is the enamel. You can kind of see it's got a very nice look to it. Using the ball burnisher, again, I said in the pink composites, I like this, so when you place this into the lingual enamel shelf, you can see how easily you can manipulate this. Could you start with an A shade, a Vita A1? Sure you could, but what I'm trying to show you is how to create enamel shelves. And it doesn't take me long to push this even subgingivally and capture the margin right there, and that's a lingual shelf. That took me all of about 30 seconds. Now I'm going to be taking the Gymer Milky White Beautiful Flow Plus. So what I do is take a little bit of Milky White, just like you're caulking a window, and caulk the seam. I can take the Goldstein micro applicator tip, Finish wetting the bevel. That's caulking the window. Now let's take our A1 and I'm going to build to the Denton DEJ. Here's an A1 Denton. Take the ball burnisher and I get it down to the DEJ, make sure that I'm into the starburst bevel where the milky white caulk was, and you can just see this is my artificial Denton or my Denton replacement. This is the A1 light cured in here, and you can see it's starting to develop. Type-it-on teeth are very difficult to match because they absorb so much light. But you can see the beautiful 2 right in here, and here's the milky white caulk right around here. I'm starting to get a seamless transition right here. All I need to do now is place the high value translucency layer. Place a increment of the high value translucent layer. This is the spatula from Clinician's Choice or Almor right here. But first of all, what you can see, we don't want to have any irregularities. I have a little too much material, so I'm going to just take a little bit of this volume right off the tooth. Use the back end of the spatula. Again, you don't need any liquid modeling or anything to soften this material and make it sculpt better. It behaves so nicely, and I've barely even touched this, and you can see how seamlessly it blends. Shape the embrasure. Pull the material over here. What I really want to do is spend time putting in the layers of materials and spend a lot less time finishing and polishing. This is what we get pre-polishing. With the starburst bevel in here, with caulking the window, with a high value translucent layer on the top of it, you can almost see it's disappeared in a seamless transition, so you can pinpoint what is material and what is tooth. This is the skeletal technique for the Class 3 restoration. Let's go on to workshop number 2. We're going to have a Class 5 restoration with a starburst bevel. I'm going to caulk that seam with a cervical flowable jimer, Beauty Flow Plus. Cervical color just for have some artistic flair. We'll put an A1 Denton in, and then we're going to overlay it with amber enamel. Okay, here's the Class 5 preparation right here. We try to keep super gingival. We don't need to go subgingival on the Typodont, but it's very generous, and we really want to remove any sharpness right here. Now let's put a starburst bevel on. It's a back and forth stroke. It's a bevel within a bevel. Grabbing more enamel rods. Here's the preparation. This is the starburst bevel up in here. Now we're going to apply the adhesion. This is the critical part. We don't want any excess outside the preparation line. You can take a bender brush, you can dry this. You can do any of that right there. And then we want to light cure that. Air thin, 5 seconds, 10 seconds. Let's do a cervical caulk the window. You can see the cervical color is going to blend seamlessly into the amber enamel. Steady hand. Take the Goldstein micro applicator. You can see how nicely that moves around. It fills in, it flows real nice. That's why I don't want to use a zero flow in this area here, because I want that to move a little bit with me. And this, now all these seams are completely adhesively shut. Now I'm going to take some A1 Denton and go up to the DEJ. Now, if you're a little skinny and if you're under contoured, then you probably need to go back and add a little more Denton, because if you overwhelm this with amber enamel that's very translucent, then the value is going to go down. It's going to look very dark. Now, if you want, you can put a little bit of stippling in here just to break the light up a little bit with the end of a ball burnisher. That's all I need. And then we light cure it. For my last increment, I'm going to add a spherical increment of amber enamel. Now, you can see how nice the beautiful 2 enamel behaves. I can go back and with the back action of the plugger, the spatula, make sure my bevel, my starburst bevel is filled, and see I'm just drawing the material up in kind of an arc. Everything beyond, I go beyond the starburst bevel, and I like here. So you can see this is amber enamel, caulk the window with cervical flowable, starburst bevel, A1 dentin, and this is the class 5. In workshop number 3, this is the artistic part. What I'll be doing is restoring a composite veneer. What I'll show you is how to layer the dentin shades, the beautiful 2 Enamel shades, in logically sequentially using the skeletal technique. Let's take a Typodon tooth and do a color analysis. What we'll see here is the translucency. This is all enamel based in here, and then we're seeing the dentin influence of the tooth or the Typodon tooth right here. This is called chromaticity right here, and this is called luminosity. This determines the value of the tooth. Also, we'll see a halo on the tooth right here. We're going to put that in with flowable composite. We have to respect the contour of the tooth. So you remember histologically, after I put the dentin in the cervical 1/3, the final overlay will only have about 3/10 millimeters of an enamel shade. Once we get into the body right here, then we're going to see less influence of the dentin and a little more influence of the final enamel cover on the tooth as we go into the incisal third, where we see much more translucency, which determines the value of the tooth. In the preparation part of workshop number 3, let's just go over some of the overviews, and I'll be using the artistic burr kit from Shofu that I designed. Just think about what we're going to be doing. We want to stay in enamel if possible, and then incorporate enough to put some dentin in a final value enamel over the top. Also, I'll demonstrate where after I do the initial preparation, I want to reduce the incisal edge length about 3 millimeters. The reason I want to do that, I want to extend the lingual shelf that we learned in the other workshops, and I'll put a translucent extension on this because the mamelons are going to drape over this way. So first I'll do the reductions throughout the tooth using a burr from the artistic burr kit. Once I finally get that, then I get my contours, then you'll see me reduce the incisal edge length by 3 millimeters. When I do the reduction, here you see the red striped diamond. Now this is a brand new burr, so it's going to be very aggressive. And you'll see me start and stop because this is a Typodont. I don't have a dental assistant. And you'll see the shank of the burr has been extended. I do this for all my procedures when I'm doing artistic work so I can do the visualization and see. So where I'm going to start here, what I'm doing is removing the enamel cover. So I'll have 3/10 millimeters here, I'll have 5/10 millimeters here, and maybe 7/10 millimeters here. If you don't want to see any of the incisal characteristics, then you can be more conservative in the reduction in the incisal third. When I'm doing a composite veneer or a minimally prepped porcelain veneer, I will stay about 3/10 millimeters and have a nice defined margin. Now, for this exercise, since I'll be showing some dentin layering concepts, once I reduce the incisal edge by say 3 millimeters right here, I'm going to go back and take a little bit more off and have more of a defined modified shoulder preparation to give me enough room on this Typodont tooth to show you the layering of the dentin mamelons and create incisal halos. When we use Beauty Bond 7th generation, it's a single layer, 5 microns film thickness. After we've light-cured the dentin bonding agent, now I'll extend the incisal edge, and this is called the lingual enamel. This is going to be translucent enamel. And I'll take this instrument from Ufridi, the CVHL 66. I'm just pushing the lingual enamel down into the stent, and if I have too much, I can just scrape some off. We can pull this down, just pull it down. You can see where the residue is going, the excess. Push it right into the stent. Make sure that the contour is not sticking up higher than the preparation. Then I can use the other part of the CVHL 66 and just do the detailing in the interproximal area to make sure I don't have any debris. That took me about a minute to put that in. After light curing, you can see the fine detail. This is a very paper thin layer right here. And it took me about a minute to place it with the right instrument. The translucent lingual shell that I placed, I can build dentin characteristics and come right over this opacity area right here and show you the dentin mamelons that I built. Now, when you take this off, if there are some irregularities, all you do is take Shofu discs, probably the green, and just clean up this edge right here. So always you'll see uniformity wherever I build. Everything is predictable, everything is uniform. The next step after we've placed the translucent lingual shelf here to build the mamelons is the first increment of dentin. This will be Beautiful 2 A1. And once I transfer this volume, that's how I do it in spheres with the back end of the plugger. So you can see when I place this, all I'm doing is making a volume estimate where the dentin stops and the enamel covering will be over the top. And that will be about 0.3 millimeters of enamel. You can see how easy this material, there's no stickiness, there's no pullback. I just push this into the final contour area right here. I can pull it down, and this should be integrated into the final preparation, the margin up here. What we're doing is creating a transition into the body of the tooth where the dentin mamelons are going to be created. What I'll do at this point is take the CVHL 66, and then what I'll do is just create like a hot wax technique. What I'm going to do here is just build up the stratifications and break the light. I know the light's going to get down there that far. Here you see the cervical dentin is light cured. Now, you can, in order for me to put the body in the mamelon, this is a Beautiful 2 B1. You can see the difference. This is a higher value because in the teeth, the highest value is in the middle third of the tooth. Now, the reason I pulled that down with the spatula like this on the whole layer is because now I'm putting the next layer and merging that into the cervical dentin. Now I have to have a seamless transition because over the top of this, after I light cure it, will be 0.5 millimeters of enamel. And if you also are going to notice that at this time, none of the dentin is going to go right to the interproximal margins because enamel is going to fill in this space right here, which frames the whole translucency of the tooth. So again, the back end of the spatula, I'm kind of push, pull, merge, and you can see the blending effect of the Beautiful 2. It's just blending right into the cervical. And you can see right now I'm approaching the incisal third of the tooth where the mamelons are going to go. This is integrated in right now. Now I'll take the CVHL 66 and start to define the mamelons. This is the final cervical dentin A1. Now, you're asking, why don't you just fill up the whole tooth, the final contour with A1 dentin? Yes, you could. There's no harm in doing that. If you're replacing nature according to its characteristics, then you have to leave room for a little enamel over here in the cervical 1/3. But this is the skeletal technique, and you can see that the striations right here really diffuse the light, and then we can add the body B1. Now, after light curing, this is the final body and mamelon layer B1. You can see how I've integrated the B1 into the A1, and there's a seamless transition, including the diffuse architecture that will not reflect the light too strongly, because otherwise that may influence the final value of the restoration. Also, you can see I left room for the interproximal enamel, the incisal halo that we're going to put on. You can see how there is going to be natural translucency to mimic the adjacent tooth. But as I develop the mamelons, you can already see the central height of contour is being established, and as an offshoot of the mesial and distal mamelons, the transitional and line angles will develop over here that we'll be marking with pencils. So this is the internal part of the skeleton that has been built. Now, to put an incisal halo in, I could take a paste composite. That's not a problem, but you see this is a very delicate edge. So if I take the beautiful Flow Plus bright white, I could take milky white, depends on the intensity of the halo. What I'll do is very carefully introduce a little bit of bright white onto the incisal edge, microplacement instrument, and pull down if I want. That is the incisal halo, flowable. There's a myriad of colors that you can choose. Now that the skeleton from the inside has been completed, let's talk about how to do the final enamel layer. What I'll do is take high value translucency, place the cervical enamel. Again, it's the same thing as replacing the dentin. You can see I carefully take the spherical increment and tease it right to the final gingival margin. So here, the final contour of the enamel, using the back end of the spatula, push it over here. If I want, I could take the spatula end of it, flatten it down. After experience, you have more of an intuition on how much material to add. I really want to build about 5% overbuilt, so my finishing and polishing will be a lot easier. And then I pull it down, I pull it down. I'll introduce incisal enamel from Beautiful 2. And what I'm going to do is merge it into the high value translucency and watch from the back end of the instrument here. You can see how nicely, and I can just push it and blend it and push it and blend it. What I'm doing is following the axial contour of the tooth. Any excess I have, I can push it back in. Really comes with experience, because again, if you have too much, you're going to pull it off the tooth and cut it. We want to build about 5% overbuild to allow for some finishing and polishing. Take about 10 minutes to put the cover on. Now you can do it sequentially. You can put the high value translucency here, light cure it, there's no harm. And then you could put the incisal 1/3 in separately. Full integration of the material from cervical to incisal. This is what it should look like, and then we'll light cure. How much cleanup do I have? How much irregularities do I have to adjust the final layer and make it confluent with the contours and the bending in the incisal edge position? Not much. Make sure you floss these joints very carefully. Then I will try my putty stent back in and verify the incisal edge length and width. When you turn the stent, and if you were grossly overbuilt in the facial area, you would see your incisal third would be sticking out or protruding over the stent. Now you have to adjust and pull that back in before you start the final polishing, the finishing polishing sequence. So I've built it just according to plan right here, and if it's sticking up, you better take it back in so it blends into the stent. This concludes the verification of the final enamel length, width, and basically contouring, and I'll show you how to contour this and finish and polish it first.